And then my brother sits me down the next morning and basically tells me, "Are you an idiot? An apostle of the Lord Jesus Christ just came to our house." And then he said, what really hit me, he said, "Scott, it's like Peter, James, and John, I'm old, coming to our house and asking you to consider going someplace. They represent the Lord. What are you doing?"
Hey, welcome to Beyond the Game. I am here with my very good friend and someone I've admired all my life, Scott Runia. I wish he had a better smile, though. Scott, good to have you here.
Thanks, Mike. No, you're a good friend too. So
You used to be, right?
no, always. You're here to interview me, but I got to start off with this.
Oh, no, don't go there. I mean, we talk about that.
Well, I was like, "Archie, Lacey, one arm grab. He's in the end zone. He catches it. BYU wins the game. Texas A&M. I mean, it was unbelievable. Probably the greatest sporting event I've ever seen in my life.
I remember getting back from Texas A&M. We flew from Houston, and it had to be like 2 a.m, And I mean, seriously, after a game like that, all of us were so excited. But I had this feeling like, oh, thank heavens I didn't drop the ball. And I'm so grateful that
It was an amazing catch. To this day, I remember it very well.
I was lucky to be in the right place at the right time. But when I remember getting off the bus from the airport, and I'm serious, it had to be like 3 a.m. because it was a night game in Houston.
Yeah.
And we get to the airport or to the parking lot outside the Smith Fieldhouse, and my car it was like I just got married. It had whipped cream, literally, and confetti and just everything in the world. Said, I must have some friends,
Right? So really, this is going to be a Mike Lacey interview.
No, it's not. Absolutely. No, never mind.
It shouldn't be.
I was really fortunate. I'm going to share with our audience here that during the last part of my college career, most people understand that football players are just guys who wanted to make the basketball team, but we couldn't do it. We were almost done.
That's good.
You know what I mean. But because I loved basketball, and at Cordova High School in Sacramento, I just remember getting my bell rung from Bill Cartwright, and he was like 4 miles away, the famous center for the Chicago Bulls, 7'2", and when his elbow came down on my head, it felt like he was 400 pounds.
But by the way, they beat us in the NCAA tournament my junior year.
There was a forward on that team that could jump and grab a quarter off the backboard.
They were amazing.
Think about that.
I mean, you jumped almost that. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was one way, real talent.
Scott Runia is one of those guys. Now, this is before the three-point line. So I'm welcoming you to talk about this, but Scott Runia had such a pure shot. I always attributed it to the fact that Scott was first generation from Europe, and for some reason, Europeans have this silky, smooth shooting touch. Can you reveal some of your secrets on why you were such a good shooter, and if you've taught that to anyone else?
Well, thanks for thinking I'm a good shooter. That makes me feel good.
Well, you were and probably still are.
So so how I attribute it now, and even back then, is I would go out and shoot 500 shots a day, every day, except for Sunday. And
then it was only 200?
No, and
I'm kidding.
I'd spin a ball in my finger. Preaching and for it, at churchy. Anyway, but I would shoot. And amazingly, when I was young, I played on, our church team for the LDS church. I played on the Baptist team.
Even though you were in high school, they let you play?
No, this was before high school.
Okay.
Yeah, junior high and things. But I would play in the Jewish Community Center League. Really? We're the Baptist.
Oh, you're in northern Utah?
We were up in like Rose Park in Salt Lake City.
Oh, it's Salt Lake. Okay.
But even with that, I'd still go shoot. The Baptist church, the guy is a neighbor. He was up fixing his roof, and he saw me in my backyard shooting baskets every day. And he asked me to play on his team. So couple that Baptist team. So yeah, great people, and loved it. But I would still go shoot. So I think the biggest thing the Americans have now is we love to be strong and dumb. Okay.
True. I mean, we all
Also, that you lift and lift and lift, and you do it, which is great. But the Europeans, for a while, they weren't playing also known. They just go to their backyard and shoot. And now we have games all year long, and kids go play. They might get 5, 6 shots in a game. And that's all they get. And where's the 500 shots a day? They're not shooting.
That's right.
But you look at Steph Curry's and some of the others, and a lot of the Europeans can shoot. Because sometimes maybe we're playing too many ball games. And you don't get the chance to shoot. You're always playing.
One thing I also noticed, the difference between the European and the American game. Now, maybe this has changed, but like 20 years ago, it felt like the Euros were getting ahead of the U.S. Why?
They were getting ahead. I think.
I mean, they were beating us in some of the Olympics,
Sure.
and
I mean, they
World Games.
They could shoot.
They could shoot, but also they played like a team game that was different.
Yeah, I mean, probably a little more team. I mean, when I was surprised when I played in Europe how physical it was. It was still pretty physical. Really, I got over there. Yeah, but I think we were a little bit ahead in ball handling and things. Like
In the U.S. or in Europe?
in the U.S.
Okay.
But I remember going to the old Yugoslavia. They could shoot the lights out. Some of us got Italy, and some of those.
And they still remember Krasipir, Coach Joseph.
I played against Krasipir over in Europe for years. So yep.
He's a tall drink of water.
Yeah, he was.
And he could handle the ball, too.
Oh, yeah. Great passer, good player. Hero in Italy. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
So
That's so fun.
Yeah.
Well, Scott was among my heroes because our basketball team back in the 1970s and early 80s was one of the best in the country. I mean, who were your teammates, Scott? You were one of the guards.
sure,
There was another guy that was a little bit known back then, one of the guards.
yeah. There were several of them, but no, Danny Ainge came. Danny's a year younger than me, but I should tell you the story. It's kind of a fun story.
I'd love to hear that.
So, and maybe I'll even start with how I got to BYU. How does that sound? And then I'll get to the Ainge story.
No, let's do that.
So
How did you get to BYU?
I grew up in Salt Lake City. I would go up to the U and play in the summer and play with the players all the time. And my dream was to go there. And I had a dear friend named Danny Vranes, not Danny Ainge, well, Danny Vranes.
And Danny Vranes was one of
Skyline. So we played against each other. He's a year younger. Wow. And we battled. My junior year, we won the state championship. We didn't win it my senior year, but his senior year, they won the state championship. But we beat him.
What high school did you go to?
I went to West High School, and he went to Skyline.
Okay.
So together, Utah BYU would get us jobs. Myself, Danny Vranes, and Greg Amerson, a dear friend from Skyline High School also. Great player that came to BYU. And a good friend. Anyway, so we're all going to, I'm going to the U for sure. Danny and I are saying we're going to U. And there was a guy named Tom Chambers out there,
Oh, man. And
really? Heck, where's he going to go? And I thought, hey, we're going to go to the U and win the national championship. So I verbally committed to play basketball at the University of Utah, but I had 2 recruiting trips left, and one of them was to Hawaii. And as a young kid, I thought, they're going to fly me over to Hawaii. I was at Liceville for a recruiting trip. Hey, don't worry, coach. At the University of Utah was Jerry Penn. And I said, I'm coming, but hey, I won't sign my layup because I kind of want to go to Hawaii. I never made it to Hawaii, but basically, Coach Pym said, I'm going to stay, I want to sign you. And my number 1 recruit, I'm staying until you sign. I said, Coach, I'm coming, don't worry. He says, well, there's another player back east in Philadelphia. If I go out and get him, I said, go get him, don't worry. Well, he leaves, and all of a sudden I get a phone call. Pym leaves leaves Pym's and goes to Philadelphia to try to get this player.
is this also a guard?
6'5" guard. I think his name was Earl Williams, to be honest with you, if I remember right. But anyway, I get a phone call. It's from BYU, and I had a wonderful recruiting trip. Frank Arnold was the head coach. He was recruiting me for UCLA, really in my early years, because he was the assistant to John Wooden.
You're kidding.
And my junior year was his last year at UCLA. And that was the year Wooden retired. UCLA went on him on the NCAA tournament.
Right.
And Wooden retires and Frank Arnold gets the job. So my senior year in high school.
At BYU.
Yeah. BYU, Frank Arnold gets the job at BYU. And so now that his first year at BYU is my senior year. But he was recruiting me, came to all my junior year playoff games and said, hey, Coach Wooden says I got the BYU job. I can start recruiting you at the BYU. And I was impressed. They came and got me. They picked me up in a helicopter, landed me right in the Marriott Center. A helicopter? Right in front of the Marriott Center. I came here with Kiki Vanderway, a guy that went to UCLA.
Yeah, Kiki's out. We were both the LDS pair, right?
Yes.
I remember that.
Colleen Hutchins or something.
Famous UCLA forward?
Yeah, great player. Yeah, had a great career. But he has to go in UCLA. And so I come to BYU, but did my trip, and I'm going to the U. Well, anyway, Coach Pim would come to my house, and we talked, and Jeff Judkins, Jeff Jonas were recruiting me from the university.
And let me interrupt just for a second, because there were some epic battles later with you and all these names that you're bringing up that ended up, some of them going to the U. And I just remember epic games between Utah and BYU, two of the top at least 25 teams in the country for all the time back then. But go ahead.
Yeah, well, anyway, so BYU does this great. Frank Arnold does this great recruiting thing, and I'm impressed. But I'm still going to you because that's my dream my whole life. I get a phone call, and somehow Coach Arnold, the church, and it's interesting because President Danny Ainge of our church,
but he was president of the university.
So I knew him and say, well, I didn't know him then, but he got to know him really well afterwards. But he gets involved. They want him to come to my house, and then it changes. They say, hey, I get a call and said, we'd have two brothers and we'd like to come visit you.
Are you
And I
kidding?
said, well, who is it? And anyway, it ends up being that Elder LeGrand Richards and Elder Marion D. Hanks. So Elder LeGrand Richards.
It sounded like these guys were coming to tell you doctrine or something.
Yeah, but he's one of the 12 apostles, and Elder Marion D. Hanks is one of the 70. And I said, they want to come see me. And I said, well, I'm going to the U, and I'm verbally committed, but would you just let him come? And I said, wow, the apostle, sure. So my parents are excited. They're Dutch. We hear it's LeGrand Richards. He'd served in Holland. My parents are from Holland. Anyway, they come to our house, and my parents make me answer the door, and I'm scared to death. I'm, 17 years old.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, he's an apostle. He's going to look into the eyes and know everything I've done wrong. And I wasn't a bad kid, but I was just scared. Anyway, he comes to the door. I open it, and he's kind of has a cane. He squints at me, and Elder Mary D. Hanks is there. And Elder LeGrand Richards says, oh, my boy, it's so good to see you. He goes, you know what? I was just at BYU 2 weeks ago, and I spoke in the devotional assembly, and he said, I looked up in the crowd, and he said, I had never seen such beautiful girls in all my life. And then he said, there's a good crop these days, my boy. There's a good crop. And immediately I was like, this is an apostle? Studying about girls? I like this guy. So they come in, and they stayed almost 3 hours, and they went, but they actually asked if I would consider going to BYU. And I said, well, I was, planning to go to U my whole life. And I said, we know. And I said, and we'd like to even have you consider maybe playing 4 straight years.
Really?
And I said, well, President Kimball says we should all serve mission. I'm planning to serve a mission. I said, yes, but we just came from the temple an hour ago with President Kimball. We're here on assignment, and we're here to see if you would consider going to BYU and considering that. Now, you could go, or you could go when after your first year, or however you want to do it, when you turn 19. But they said, and you had your own decision. Utah's a wonderful place also, but we're here to see if you'd go. Well, my older brother, had just returned from a mission in Holland, and he'd been home 6 days. So they say, Elder LeGrand Richards was great. I've never been saying,
your brother had just gotten home from a mission. And was he positive about his mission? Did he enjoy his mission? Loved it?
Loved it. Mission was great. Anyway, so everything while Elder LeGrand Richards spoke Dutch to my parents, and I understand it because I heard growing up and can speak a little bit of Dutch. So anyway, they leave. And I'm still thinking, wow, what do we do? You know, what is going on? I
Sound a little good pressure.
So when they come to my house, oh, I should show you the picture. I have a picture at all. You know,
Oh, and we'll want you to share that with us, please.
okay. Anyway, but so my brother, I go about a day thinking, oh, I still want to go to you. Da, da, da. And then my brother sits me down the next morning and basically tells me, are you an idiot? An apostle of the Lord Jesus Christ just came to our house. And then he said, what really hit me, he said, Scott, it's like Peter, James, and John, I'm old, coming to our house and asking you to consider going someplace. They represent the Lord. What are you doing? And I just went, holy cow, what is happening? So believe it or not, I get thinking that I get down and I say a prayer. And I was a good kid, but I didn't have to pray for anything really in my life. Things were good, you know? So I pray about.
Why didn't you tell me this, Mac, when we were
at stage? I'm going to go. I'll tell you why, but tell you. So
keep going.
I think, so I'm going to BYU. So you know what I do? I get on the phone, and you know who I call? Danny Vranes. Because Danny's a junior, and we're going to go to the U. We're going to go win the national championship.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Anyway, I tell him what's going on, and said, Danny, but I want to play with you, but here's what's happening. You know, this. I'm going to BYU. They don't know yet, but I'm going to call them in a minute and tell them to get here. So I tell him that, and the hope was that we'd play together. That he would come as I'm not coming.
Well, what kind of salesman were you? Come on. Danny Grains was unbelievably good, right?
Great player.
He was a great player. Was he also a member of the church?
Oh, yeah.
And
so the prayer and Jack Jenkins are like cousins.
yeah. So, and I mean, Jenkins is still. So anyway, why did LeGrand Richards and Marion D. Hanks not go to Danny Brain's house, or did they?
I can't answer that question.
Okay.
Don't ask me. Why they come to my house? I'm just a kid on the west side of Salt Lake.
Yeah, I can't.
Why would they come to the house?
That's amazing.
So they made some explanations about missionary work and how, you know, sports did better even in some foreign countries. I don't really know to this day why all of this happened, other than it happened. And so I called Frank Arnold, the coach, and he seems like he was there like within 45 minutes from Provo, and I signed. And then it gets out in the media, and Coach Pym was back in Philadelphia.
You hadn't told him.
I haven't told. And he calls me, and sure, he was frustrated, and I love Coach Pym. And the players, I mean, you know, they're good people, but it almost broke my heart. And I can tell you, after that, every time we played Utah, every game I'd walk up to Coach Pym, I'm so sorry. I handled that so poorly. And I promised you I was coming to the U, but this thing happened. Well, if you go out after that occurred, and I started telling people, if you're a Utah, it doesn't go over.
That would not go.
So why didn't I tell people? I told a few people, and it was ugly.
Yeah.
And so I just went quiet.
That was smart.
I'm not going to talk about it.
You're wise.
So anyway, so I also commit to them that I'll play 4 straight years. So after my first year at BYU, we weren't very good.
You weren't very good?
No, we didn't do it. I got the start first year. We started like 4 games into the season.
What was your first year?
76, 77.
Oh, so I went on my mission January of 76. So that's why I wasn't there. I didn't see you.
So we got there, and I mean, we were okay, but we didn't live up to what we should have been. And I got to start, you know, which was great as a freshman and everything else. But after that year, I went to my dad and said, Dad, I don't see this. And they wanted me to go, but we didn't do very well. And I think I should just go to my mission. And knowing being my father who's came to America because of the church and everything from Holland, he said, well, Scott, you can do what you want with this, but you did make a commitment to an apostle of the Lord Jesus Christ. You can either commit that and keep that commitment or not. And I said, oh, Dad, don't put it that way. But I decided I'm going to stay. Well, fortunately, I stayed. So I stay, and the next thing you know, a guy named Danny Ainge comes on a recruiting trip. So Danny comes, and Greg Anderson, my dear buddy.
What was it our first year, 76 or so? No,
I'm a 78. So he said, you're younger than me. So Danny comes on his recruiting trip, and we go to the University Mall in Borum and LeGrand.
And my first year back, you're going to go to a movie. My first year back from my mission was 1978, my redshirt year in football. So I'm going to your basketball games fresh out of Central America where I had been. And I'm looking at your team saying, wow, these guys are fun to watch.
So
Maybe I'm jumping the gun, but you're going to a movie.
yeah, we go to a movie where we have our center. I won't mention his name because of what he had to do. Anyways, the movie sold out. We come out and it starts snowing. And Danny's so excited. He's from Eugene, Oregon. He starts throwing snowballs at cars and trucks. Well, there are some, guys on a date in this beautiful brand new truck, and Danny's just plastering this truck. Well, we're leaving to get in my car, and all of a sudden one of these guys jumps out of the truck and grabs Danny. And, Farrell wants to rough him up. So, well, our big center, who is from Ogden, won't mention his name, kind of grabs him, said, hey, leave Danny alone, And anyway, this kid pushes Marc. Well, his name Marc. Anyway, pushes Marc, and Marc, I think his sunglasses broke. And next thing you know, Marc decks this guy.
Really?
And this guy's laying on the ground. And I'm just thinking, weird. I think Marc had his BYU letter jacket on. But we were so much trouble. And Danny's thinking this is the coolest day of the world. So we drive to our home, and we get there to where I was living. And Frank Arnold's already called. But he got word something. We didn't have cell phones in those days.
No.
Somehow he hears, and he gets me on the phone. God, Ray, what's going on? I heard there was a fight in the parking lot. What do you guys do? We have a recruit. And I said, Coach, I had to the phone.
Were you with the recruit at this movie?
Oh, Danny was there.
This was his recruit. He had a
Recruiting trip.
sorry.
By Ainge's recruiting trip.
Stay up with the story, Lacey.
So anyway, we get home, and then I hand the phone to Marc Handy, who's our center. Now you know who it is. And Marc says, Coach, this kid, Danny Ainge, is throwing snowballs. They were going to beat him up. I mean, you want a recruit to go home with a black eye? I had to take care of this guy. Well, I just remember Frank Arnold, our coach is going, you can't. He hangs up like, I can't believe this. So, but we do that. And then Danny and I, we do some snowmobiling things, and Danny knows all of it. But then at one point, we get talking on this recruiting trip. I said, hey, we want to go play some basketball.
I have a question. Was Danny playing baseball at the time?
Danny was playing baseball, so yeah. So
okay, so
Danny's a great.
Oh yeah.
And so anyway, we go play basketball and we're playing. We're like, oh, this guy's good. So afterwards, we go to dinner and we're with our coach Frank Arnold. And he said, "What do you guys do this?" And I said, "Oh, we wouldn't play it." And Frank said, Coach Arnold says, "Play basketball, Scott. What do you do?" That's, I guess, Danny just says, you can't play any recruiting trip. I'm like, Coach, I'm a freshman. I don't know these things. So he kind of sits me and reprimands me, and we go. But Danny probably doesn't even know this. Later that night, I meet with Frank, our coach, and he says, Scott, he goes, but I need to ask him. I go, what? He goes, how good is he? And I said, Coach, he's good. I said, this kid's kind of dangly, and he's competitive. He was light and skinny, but hey, I said, we need him. I said, if we're going to move from where we are now, we need Danny Ainge. He said, well, the assistant coaches wouldn't watch him. I saw him play. He didn't have one of his better games when I went to see him play. I said, Coach, this guy is good. I said, we need Danny Ainge. And, well, worstly, Danny Ainge came. So Danny came, and a guy named Alan Taylor out of California, big center. And my sophomore year, Danny's freshman year, we go to UCLA. They're ranked #1 in the nation. Poly Pavilion, Lou Alcindor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, all the girls.
Oh my God.
Was
John Wooden coach?
John Wooden's not.
Okay.
He's gone. Anyway, so we get there, and we're taking to the wire, and we're up by 1, and we're going to win. And they shoot. I remember guarding their point guard. He shoots it, bounce on the rim. Alan Taylor goes up to get the rebound, tips his finger, and Alan tips it in. And it was just a freak deal, and UCLA beats us by 1. But I walked out of it thinking, all right, I could see this. We're going to be good. We're young, and we are going to be good. We just took the #1 team in the nation
to the wire.
In their court, in this great traditional Poly Pavilion, and then it changed. Yeah, but we had a decent year that year, and then my junior and senior were always ranked in the top 20. I think we got to 8 one time, but Anyway,
You guys were so fun to watch.
well, we had Glenn Roberts, Keith Rice that year.
They were the forwards.
Yep, they were the forwards, and we were young, and we did well. And then the next year, Fred Roberts, Glen's brother, came. Devin Durant came.
When did Steve Trumpel come?
Same time was Fred and Devin. So and we had Steve Craig.
You had
By the way, Steve Craig came. He was the first recruit that Frank Arnold brought in out of Beverly Hills. So he was a freshman when I was a senior in high school, and I saw him play. And I thought, that kid's talented. He had to jump out of the gym. I'd always say, that's good out. I'd ask him, how high can you jump? And then I'd realize he could jump as high as he needed to. But Steve was probably the best athlete. We'd go against each other in practice.
He always went to his right, though.
I went right, but I think the best athlete I've ever played this in my life. Steve Craig was talented.
I played softball against Steve Craig, and he had this flick of the wrist with that bat. And I prided myself for being a decent hitter. But when he hit a softball, any kind of ball, I mean, the ball just popped off his bat. He was
Steve was an amazing athlete. And so is Danny. So are all.
No, you had
As far as everyone I even played against in college, Steve Craig was probably the greatest all-around athlete. Strong, could jump, athletic,
and
fastest.
Many people might know that he married Marie Osmond.
They're dear friends of ours, and that's always we get together.
I imagine what does Steve Craig do nowadays? Do you know? Is he a golfer or a tennis player? Or?
Steve's had a few little health problems and things, but he loved mountain biking. He allowed to go mountain biking some together. So,
are you a mountain biker?
I'm a road biker now. I'm not a good mountain biker. I'd rather do a road bike.
I have a son who's a wonderful mountain biker, and says, "Dad, you gotta go on a mountain bike," because I've loved road biking. We used to road bike from Monterey, California to Carmel. Not from Carmel to Malibu Beach. So 3 years in a row, I was in charge of the priest quorum, and in our ward in Sacramento, California, we would ride that Highway 1, and I love road biking. When I got on the mountain bike, I thought every time I saw my life before my I don't know what it was.
Yeah, mountain bike is rough on you. When you get older, I think that I just don't like the bouncing. And I got over the front of my handlebars a few many times.
That has been my problem a couple of times.
So I thought, I don't need this. So
I have an interesting perspective on what you've said, and I want to go into this a little bit deeper because I love the fact how you dealt with LeGrand Richards and Marion D. Yanks coming to your home and talking to you about that. I know that BYU was a great benefactor of that, and I expect that you're going to be able to share that you were a benefactor as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I love the RSU. I don't have this thing. I didn't understand, even in high school, this competitive between you, BYU, the OSU.
And I didn't either. I'm from California.
I mean, these were my friends who were playing, and I wanted to beat them because you're pretty competitive.
Absolutely.
In fact, Arnold, our coach, told me he's never met anyone more competitive than me.
No way.
And he said, you do it in the most quiet way.
You do.
And my wife told me that, too. So it's some other people.
That's going to be a precursor to where we go here.
Anyway, but I am, I don't know.
I think that's all. But here's my story. Because I don't think Lacey is as smart as Runia. No, wait. All right. I led a different path.
Hey, why do you say that? Remember when I had one class left when I left to play pro ball in Europe? It was an accounting class, and I called you about to help me be my tutor for that accounting class. And I know over in Europe, but we're calling each other on the phone.
You don't know how many times I've what's it called? Humble brag? Humble brag. Yeah, I was Scott Runia's accounting mentor. Well, I remember those days, and those were fun days, and I count you as my best pupil. That's,
everything I learned from my life.
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay, there you go. Sometimes I wonder, why did I go into accounting? But it is the language of business, so I was really it wasn't easy for me. And so it was fun to teach a little bit as a tutor. And you, Scott, were fun to be with. We were always friends. And I was married now, and I don't know, you were married by then.
The first year I went to Europe, I was single, and then I got married. We were dating.
You met Tammy at BYU.
Yep, I was a singer. She was a friend.
And she is beautiful.
Most beautiful girl I've ever seen.
And, well, almost as beautiful as Diana, my wife.
And inside and out, just I'm lucky as me.
You know, and that's the way to go. But LeGrand Richards, when he said, "Oh, those beautiful girls up there," said, I wanted to interrupt right there and say, "Okay, Tammy might have been up in that audience. I don't know."
It was prophecy fulfilled in my book, absolutely. But she didn't come till my senior year.
There you go. And you and she are a team, and a very good team. And I want to go there, but I want to contrast. LeGrand Richards, Mary and Hank show up at your house, talk to you about going to BYU. And I think that's fair. I mean, Utah fans are going to say, "Oh, that's, manipulation or whatever." But I'm glad you went to BYU. And I wish you could have got Danny Vranes and Tom Chambers. Those guys were unbelievable. And watching you guys play, you and Danny Ainge and Fred Roberts and Steve Trumbo and Devin Durant and Alan Taylor or Greg Kite, and jumping up in the, and your games, your epic games against UNM and Utah, two of the other great teams in the country, let alone the Western Athletic Conference. All right, Lavelle Edwards, our football coach, and we know which sport predominant. I'm kidding.
So I'm not sure why we have a football out there, but
Scott, when he first walked in, why don't we have a basketball there? Of course. But here's what happened with me, because I'm a convert to the church. I'm from California. I was behind in 1975, my freshman year. I was behind two seniors at weak side linebacker. Fred Whittingham liked me. I could run. I was athletic, good size, I guess. And I was really looking forward to playing football for BYU. But I also knew, just like you did, that I had to go on a mission. I didn't quite have the family understanding of these are apostles and you talk to them.
Right.
Because Lavelle Edwards, I don't want to speak out of turn, but at that moment, he said, these were his words to me: "Mike, the only guy that has come back and successfully played football has been Lance Reynolds. And I want you to talk to Marvin Ashton and Elton Perry, because they want to meet with you and talk about this mission you're talking about." And Lacey is using the mind of I think I was 18 at the time.
Right.
Going to be 19 in a month or so.
Right.
I better not talk to them, because they're going to talk me out of going on a mission. Seriously, serious. And so I chose, "Coach, I can't go talk to them." I wish I had. It would have been interesting to deal with that issue the way it was back then. But I have the greatest respect for what you've done, because, my heavens, you and Tammy, in your lives and in your service, even in your representation on the on the sporting fields, have certainly been emissaries and ambassadors for the church and many other good causes.
Well, you're nice. It was interesting, though. Me, Tammy, I'm a senior, and Elder Richards has said, "Hey, you may, after 4 years, you could go on a mission, or you could end up getting married."
That's what Lavelle was talking about when they go.
Yeah, and he said, but he said both are right, and he even made a comment like, knowing you may end up wanting to get married. Well, I meet Tammy, faithful girl from Walnut Creek, California. We fall in love fast, and then I think, hey, let's get married and go to Europe.
What year?
So this is 1980.
Okay. So Diana and I were married in August of 80. So you were in my line.
August. So anyway, I'm talking to, I want to get married. Tammy, on the other hand, is very young. She's a freshman. She says, "Well, I want to try out for cheerleader." So I know you go try out, but you won't make it. She goes, and she's very talented, and she made it, and I'm upset. because now I have designed a con. She's pushing for me to go on a mission. Tammy was pushing for me to go on a mission.
Wow.
But I was using the crutch that I'd heard from LeGrand Richards because I was in love with her. And, when you're in love, it kind of sways you. So I want to get married. She makes cheerleader. We make this thing like, well, she's going to be a cheerleader. I'm going to go to Europe for 1 year. And let's date and make sure. Yeah. Well, she starts dating some, and I go over there and realize, the lifestyle of an LDS young man was not the same.
Professional basketball.
And I have many stories about that.
I remember talking to you back then. You even told me, man, when I was in Holland, it's a different world.
Yeah, and so wonderful people, and whom I love to this day. But a little different standard when it comes to what the church is. So I really didn't date at all. Plenty of temptation in my life, but I actually really gained my testimony over there. That's when I started going with the missionaries. I studied and read all the standard works, A Marvelous Work and a Wonder that Richards had given me. I read Jesus the Christ from Talmage, and I studied, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me as far as spiritually goes.
Well,
I found out who Scott Runia was. I could have done anything. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. What happens in Amsterdam, Holland stays in Amsterdam, Holland, and there's no cell phones. But I realized then that I knew that God knew, and that meant so much to me. And I knew what I wanted out of life, and I wanted to marry Tammy. Tammy would. So fortunately, she dated, things went on. I would always use this Steve Trumbull line. Hey, Tammy, you can have hamburger all you want, but when you want steak, you come here. It didn't work with Tammy.
why was Steve Trump? That was such a leak. He had us all laughing all the time.
Oh, he did. I love Steve. He's hilarious. Fortunately, things, are working out, and she's realizing she really loves me. And so she's a cheerleader. It's the year that Danny Ainge, first of all, football, what happens is Jim McMahon throws the Hail Mary, and she's at the game, and they win. And I think the next day in my contract.
That was the last game I ever played in because next year I have
she flies to Holland the next day.
after the game.
After game. She comes
Right before Christmas.
Yeah, she comes over, and I pick her up at the airport, and I'm in a tournament in a place called Haarlem, the Netherlands, Holland, and that's how Haarlem is named, by the way, in New York.
Wow.
I pick her up, we're driving, and my coach is an owner of the team, is very wealthy, so we have nice cars. We're driving, we're going over the bridge, and I give Tammy a kiss, and wham, I went right into a car. No. And there you have to clean up the glass, you have to clean all up. I did the game, my hands are cut a little bit, and the coach just swears on me. He's yelling at me, what do you do? Fortunately, I played a great game.
You had a great game.
And setting me there for a few days.
You don't have any pom-poms, though.
No pom-poms. Okay. But we realized, so I take her to this beautiful windmill that's turned into a really nice restaurant, Dutch windmill, that on my knee, and proposed to her. So we get engaged. She comes home, the basketball team, Ainge, and the whole crew go on to the Final Eight, have a great year. And I stay there and come home in April. We get married in May. So anyway, then we head back the next year.
I love that. Head back to Europe.
Back to Europe for Clay.
So you played in 81 to 82?
Yeah, so I guess that would have been 80, 81, 81, 82. And then I signed a 3-year contract. I actually had a really good year. I made an all-Dutch team.
How did you go to Merrill Lynch then? Because I remember.
So Tammy, we had children fast. So our first son was born 11 months after we were married, and we found out she was pregnant like 2 days before we left for Holland. And she had morning sickness. It was tough.
We paralleled our lives back then, I remember.
Anyway, so I signed this contract, and they found out I could be a Dutchman because my dad was made an American citizen 10 days after I was born. So you're allowed 2 Americans, and now I don't count as an American. So
you're allowed 2 Americans.
On each team in Europe.
So you're there as a.
I was allowed an American in the beginning, but now I'm Dutch, so I'm really valuable. Because then I make the all Dutch team, so you're top 5 players in Holland, So, and most of the players are, I played against, I played against in college,
Sure.
So it was fun.
I mean, are you eligible to like go to national teams and Olympics and things?
Supposedly, yes.
Wow.
But so we get talking and we decide, well, ladies, we're not going to go back. And again, you have to realize we're starting a family and everything else. So I start interviewing and I get hired. Like a couple of firms give me offers and I end up at Merrill Lynch. But Europe calls me every year for 7 years to come back.
To come back and play.
Yeah. And
But you're busy in the
right at the end of the 7-year mark, Tammy finally says, we need to go. They wanted me to play in the postseason tournament. I would have to play in 5 games. So I'm getting in shape, and I've been playing, with basketball just
while you're at Merrill Lynch.
early morning basketball.
Play basketball early morning.
Well, up through to the end of our mission. I haven't played much since we
Really?
were over there.
Okay.
But anyway, so we decide, after 7 years of them calling, let's go and give it a whirl. So I'm up getting ready and getting shape. But then right about a week before we're going to go, I get a phone call saying FIBA, Federal International Basketball Association, says you have to play in 10 regular season games to play in the.
Were there enough left?
No, there was 5.
Son of a gun.
I think there was 6 actually when I got there. So we ended up not going. And that was the day I knew I was 100% done and they'd never go play again. That was a little tough one.
Is that Marc? Emotionally.
Yeah.
What was that like letting go of?
Tammy knows I'd have dreams like, I'm going to go play and my shoes are locked in the locker and I don't get to go play. She said, you have a psychological thing that this was painful for you. Yeah, I love the game. I love basketball.
And the way you did, you could tell.
Yeah, it was fun. Whenever I got in a slump, I took it too seriously. And,
Wait, Scott Runia got into slumps?
I don't like slumps. But every once in a while I got in the shooting slump.
In baseball, did you ever go into a batting slump?
I guess a little bit, but not.
I did a couple of times, and it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
So anyway, you got into some slump. You got into a slump, or
yeah. So you get into a slump. I remember my senior year in college, I got in a slump. You brought it up before. I went 1 for 13. I just met Tammy, by the way. I just met Tammy.
Really?
I invite her to the game. Okay.
All right.
And I'm worried because I have a kind of an old girlfriend there, and who used to be a cheerleader.
How old was she?
No. That girl was more my age. Tammy's a freshman. And I could see this thing going on. And I'm like, oh, wow. I'm kind of thinking this is a little uncomfortable. I go 1 for 13. We're Reed place at the University of Illinois. And here, this is like one of the only games my last 2 years we lose at home. We don't lose at home.
And I'm at that game, and I'm proud of my friend Scott Runia. Scott Runia has this unbelievably good shooting percentage all the time. And I remember Scott Runia out on the field on court, and he's 1 for 13, you said? I thought it was like...
You said 1 for 12. I wanted to crank. It was 1 for 13. 1 for 13. And because everybody wrote about it.
Yeah.
I'm like, who's ever free? They were going like that.
They can't miss.
Yeah. So it was... I didn't like it.
No, neither did I. I was mad at you.
The funny thing is, we'll go into sport. After that game, I take Tammy to a fast food restaurant in my car, an old yellow Nova that I bought in high school. We come out, and my car's stuck in reverse. It has a clutch, stick 3 on the floor. We have to drive back to the dorms backwards. And that's my first impressive day, with 10. And she made it so fun. We laughed and laughed and laughed. But I thought, she'll never go out with me again. This guy's a goof, He goes 1 for you to drive home backwards. This is not a good day.
I thought you were going to say some fans saw you. Yeah, we saw a game, and
Unfortunately, nobody criticized me then. I saw enough in the papers. But anyway, it was, so I went through, after that, kind of 2 more games. I kind of still struggled. And I remember sitting down with my dad. We were in Oregon. I said, Scott, you're not having fun anymore. What are you doing? You love this game. Just go have fun. And I thought, and Frank actually benched me I started since I was a freshman. And Steve Craig started in front of me. But I came in, I think I scored 20 points both games. And I remember walking off. Off the bench. So I was tipped that I wasn't starting. I'd walk by Frank Arnold and I'd say, see? There you go, sit out. See? And so 2 games really, but I came in really fast, and I had some of my best games. And then it was over. Then from then on, I thought, I got to play this game because I love it.
Now,
The love of the game.
I know that feeling of wanting to go to the coach and say, "See,
I was a little feisty.
no,
I was competitive.
we had to be. You were competitive, and that's what I know about Scott Runia. Scott Runia, as people can tell, has a wonderful smile. He's humble. You never kind of seek the limelight, but you, like the rest of us, have an ego, and you have a competitive nature. Did you tell us earlier that was it Frank Arnold?
Arnold said I was the most competitive player he's ever met, but crazy in a quiet way.
You are
Well,
crazy
probably.
in a quiet way. Now we're gonna have
Some people are more competitive than others. I told you if I ever wanted to go to war and I'm in a foxhole, there's a few players I'd take out there. I'll start with Danny Ainge because Danny is competitive and he's amazing, and I think that's why he's so good. Jim McMahon, I thought was the same. Steve Young is a dear friend of mine. Steve is afraid of failure. Steve will not fail. That guy is
maybe he's your sniper.
so he's a mate. Yep. But there are some people that just have a touch more. And so, yeah, it's kind of weird. It can be to your detriment too.
You know, it's interesting because, of course, Danny Ainge and Jim McMahon are two different personalities.
Correct.
And yet, as teammates, and Scott and I were roommates, so we shared notes, we talked with each other. And it was interesting to me. I didn't know Danny Ainge well enough. I mean, we were friends, but I didn't know him well enough to have this opinion. But Scott told me, Mike, Danny Ainge and Jim McMahon are kind of the same in some ways. And that intense desire to win and yet bring their teammates up with them. You know, so Jim McMahon to me didn't have that big of an ego. He was willing to share it with everybody. And my heavens, when he got on the stage, he performed. But he knew that his offensive guard had to be a good player too, or do well. And so Jim was the guy, when you saw him play for the Bears, he was headbutting every guy on the team. You know, it wasn't just the Walter Paytons.
Right.
And I think Danny Ainge's, I played golf with Danny once, and I'm not a very good golfer.
Danny is.
Danny is. And we were with Johnny Miller and another group in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I remember we were on a team, and Danny's so competitive, we had to win. You know, and he and Johnny Miller made me a better golfer that day. It was amazing. And they did some unbelievable things. So I see where you're going. If you're in a foxhole, you know, the Steve Youngs and the Jim McMahons and Danny Ainges have this extra level of competitiveness and yet teamwork.
Right.
And you're one of those guys too, Scott.
Well, you do what you need to do to try to win, you know, and you're better off if the team wins. It's just how I
Let me take a tangent here. The funniest story in the world has been the one where Danny Ainge bit Tree Rollins, right?
I know they did a whole study and everybody believes that. Trevor Rollins bit Danny Ainge, took Danny Chatfield Tree Rollins. But I think they say 70% of the people they'll believe that Danny bit.
I know. I mean,
It's just the other way around.
exactly. I know.
But that, you know, that's Danny's competitiveness. I mean, in practice, Danny would go against a guy named Greg Bowell, who's a great player.
Left-handed,
That's
all guard.
Yeah, just great guy. But I think you know, Greg Bowell made Danny a better player because they had a battle in practice.
Hey, Greg. Oh,
Yeah, Greg's prone and he's tall, and yeah.
you never shared that story about, because you and I both, you in Salt Lake, me in Rancho Cordova, California, we had President Kimball who told us all generally as youth, all young men go on missions. And I love the fact that you had to make a decision because an apostle came to you and talked to you specifically. And that's interesting. I love how you made that decision and how quiet you were about.
Well, I was quiet because it didn't go over well.
Well,
Especially up in Salt Lake City. True, where I grew up.
But tell us, because now you and Tammy have served as what they call now mission leaders. And that used to be called what? And still is.
So you did mission president.
You're a mission president and you served in Australia. How did you feel when you got this call to be a mission president?
It was absolutely amazing. I first of all, I was in Area 70. Thought I had one more year
Here in Utah?
here in Utah. We get a call right before General Conference in March,
What year?
2018.
Okay.
And so we even told our kids, don't worry, it's not mission president. It's probably some committee they want, I would serve on, or maybe something for Tammy and my wife. And anyway, we go up there and Elder Holland pulls us in and says, hey, we need help. Can you guys go on mission? Like now, well, 2 months, basically.
What month was this?
So this is really almost April 1st.
So they're calling you on the normal.
Yeah, sure. I honorable, yeah. And Tyke, yeah. So we ended up going normal July. So Tammy immediately said, we're going. And I said, my wife and I made this decision a long time ago, Elder Holland. We're going to serve the Lord whenever asked, we'll go. So next morning, get a call from President Oaks. So we go in there. He gives the official call and tells us that, where we're going because this what happened to this mission president who broke his neck. We're in Sydney, Australia. They have a North and South mission. It's going to be combined. Mission president who's broke his neck was going to inherit both missions. And now we're going to.
Now, that'd be you.
But we get the call and I go home and I break down. I go into my own room because I'd never served a mission. And
So this was an unfulfilled.
it's an unfulfilled. I used to think I felt less than others because I didn't spend 2 years just in the gospel. And I've served in my whole married life. I've had some pretty major callings. A bishop, a couple of state presidencies, but I always, even in all that, just felt this lack. And so I've studied the scriptures a lot, and probably more than I ever would have if I had gone. But I have felt like I was lagging or trailing, and then all of a sudden, I'm getting called to go be a mission president. And I think I'm going to go for 3 years and serve the Lord, and I'm not going to worry about work. My son ran our business while I was gone. I was going to go serve the Lord, and for the first time in my life, I got to do that. And I'm surprised how that affected me when it happened.
Share your emotions. How did it affect you?
Oh, I did. I was in tears. Interestingly enough, now when I look back at Elder LeGrand Richards coming to my home and Elder Marion D. Hanks, maybe it wasn't about basketball at all. I don't know. Maybe it was the direction of our lives. Now my wife has a major calling. Yeah, Tammy is who's better in all this stuff than I ever was. But
Tammy is a wonderful girl and woman and leader. She's in the General Young Women's Presidency, right?
correct. Now, and even President Oaks, when she got called, said that very thing. He goes, no, Scott, maybe everything that transpired with Elder Richards and other Marion D. Hay was amazing. Maybe it wasn't just basketball. Maybe there were other reasons. So, and Tammy and I think it was. So,
I always kind of sense that in the background. It goes unspoken. I did choose to go on a mission, and I don't feel I was ever proud of that. I was proud of having served the mission, and I'm like you. I felt like I was always a pretty good guy. But if an apostle looked straight in my eyes, but you are living proof that the accolades or the things that we've accomplished in the past, or the fact that I liken it to the prodigal son. I mean, does God think higher of a young man who served a mission rather than a guy who listened to an apostle and went and played basketball? I think when you think about the Savior and that prodigal son who came home and his father killed the fatted calf and was tearfully joyful that this son came back. Not that you were the prodigal son, you weren't. But it shows to me.
I think you think I was the prodigal son.
All right, you know what?
But that's how you feel a little bit.
I think all
And us during a mission, I kind of felt like that a lot.
I think all of us are prodigal sons. And if we don't consider ourselves prodigal sons, we're probably Pharisees.
We're all prodigal sons. Absolutely. I agree with that.
And Scott, so culturally, it's something that was probably a problem back then, because I know plenty of people who've gone on missions and you'd say, oh, I sure hope my daughter doesn't marry him. Or other young men like Mr. Scott Runia, who chose to not go on a mission for very valid and good reasons. And most fathers in the world would say, man, I hope my daughter can marry a man like that. So thank you for doing what you've done. And now you and Tammy, I mean, sounds like Tammy's schedule is pretty busy.
It's very busy. We just got back from Central America. And but it's wonderful. You know, it's we're all in this together, and if we can serve wherever, great.
Love that. When we talk about Danny Ainge and his confidence, for example, we spoke with Fred Roberts, and Fred admitted, said, Lacey, I had the wrong goal. So, what was that? He said, back when you guys were super good, and as a team, he said, yeah, I wanted to have the highest field goal percentage on the team. So what's the matter with that? That sounds like a great goal. Well, then he compared it with Danny Ainge. Danny Ainge comes in the locker room afterwards and says, I only took 18 shots. I should have taken 25. And he says, if I'm 4 for 8, I'm not contributing as much, perhaps. And so his goal perhaps kept him down from maybe accomplishing more. He maybe should have shot more. You told me earlier about your team and the scoring that you guys had. What was that?
Yeah, you have to remember, we didn't have a 3-point shot. We didn't have a shot clock. No. So they were only like Kauai, let the ball for 10 minutes.
And they came to score low.
Yeah, and if you look at, first of all, Danny and Fred Roberts and Devin Durant, they're huge scorers, but they didn't have 3-point line.
And you were a good scorer.
And Danny has the highest, I think, points per game still at BYU, and he never had 3-point line. And they didn't have a shot.
Even after Jimmer Fredette?
Even after Jimmer Fredette. Wow. So he's, I mean, if you really look at it, I mean, I'm biased because I played with Danny. I mean, it was a different time. Hey, if there had been when a team would hold the ball for 10 minutes, well, your scoring average goes down. When there were teams that would not run, we ran like crazy, and nobody wanted to run with us.
You did.
I mean, we were fast, and it was an outbreak game, and it was a fun game to play. And if there
had been a 3-point line when you and Danny Ainge and Steve Craig were there,
well, who knows? I mean, you can't say, but
think about it.
It would have changed things.
It would have, because you shot from out there and shot well from out there.
Yeah. There's a confidence. You want to talk about confidence? I'll tell you how I thought about it.
Yeah.
This is terrible. This is arrogant. When we had like a technical foul and you had someone to shoot it, I wanted to shoot it. Well, Danny and I would kind of go back and forth a little bit. If one person missed it, then the next person got all the rest of the technicals. So basically, when I got up to the foul line, or if I was shooting a shot, there's 23,000 fans in the Marriott Center.
Right.
We filled that thing a lot of times.
You did? And I
remember having a crucial foul shot, and I would say to myself, Scott Runia, you've shot more shots than 23,000 people in this arena. If anybody should be on this foul line, it's you. Okay. And you're going to make it because you've trained yourself to do this. And I would get up there so confident because I really believed if anyone should be shooting that foul shot in the whole arena, it was me. Because I had paid the price. There's actually a scripture. It talks about let your confidence wax strong, Yeah, if you have a pure heart, that's right. And then your confidence will wax strong. My confidence waxed strong. I believed I put in more work. Not that I was more talented, but that I had put in more work. And I go shoot 100 foul shots every day, for I don't know how many times in my life, just forever. So when I bank 100 out of 100,
Really?
Yeah, probably 5, 6 times, 7 times during the basketball year. And then you miss one, it'd be tickling. I didn't get 100 out of 100. And it's easy when you're in a rhythm doing that. But when you're tired, it's harder. But that was my attitude. And even when I shot a shot, I expected it to go in because I thought I have shot. I can make a shot. The other thing that was funny was, here we have this great team, great players I get to play with. I just feel blessed to be able to play with all these guys, and they're great guys. And anyway, but as I'm going through all of this, we've got guys that score. They love to shoot. Frank Arnold, some mornings, our coach, would call me up early and say, "Scott, come on in." And I'd go in, and I could tell they hadn't even gotten to bed after the game. You started so many plays on this left side with Devin. You started so many with Danny. Well, I knew Danny going left shot 67% going left, but going right, he was shooting 37%. And Devin, if he got the ball down, this was where on the left side, yeah. And so it sounds like doing money. So, like with Fred Roberts, if you had a fast break, Fred would come like a locomotive. He would come so fast. I can hear his footsteps. And then I think he's going to duck. I mean, if I can get him open, I got to be open. But I didn't want to give it to Fred and make him dribble because he's going so fast, he's going to, fumble the ball sometimes. I wanted to give it to him so he could catch and dunk. So you start to know what these players are like and where they're best. So that's the fortune of playing a lot of years together. So we were doing that, but Frank would come in and say, "You started this many times on the right side with Danny, this with Devin, blah, blah, blah." And he had it. I mean, he had dissected, I think it was 5 or 6 times. Yeah. But we had film or videotape, Wow. But he would go over, and then he would tell me, "Scott, that was a bad shot Danny shot." And I'd say, "That's my fault?" He goes, "Yes." Then I'd say, "Scott," he'd say, "You're the quarterback. You're running this team. I don't call the plays. You're supposed to see what's working out there. You call the plays." And I go, "Danny, Devin, Fred, Alan, they've never seen a shot of that y'all like, and I haven't seen one I haven't liked. So we got a problem." Well, amazingly, all 5 of us are in the top 1,000 scorers at BYU history. All 5 of us. So that's a hard thing to control, a bunch of players. Let me stop like to shoot.
Let me stop there because think about it.
It's amazing then, because sometimes I remember playing basketball and there were guys who were black holes. You pass it to them, you're not getting the ball back. And when all of you guys are such great scorers and none of you have seen a shot you don't like, for each of you to be in the top 10, 1,000 scorers, or that you scored 1,000
points in your career. Yeah.
That's amazing.
I don't know how many there are. 60.
You brought up Frank Arnold.
Yes.
And that's amazing. I didn't know that he was such a, we call it Moneyball in baseball, where you're going down to the deep statistics.
Yeah.
He passed away this week.
My wife and I were on a church assignment in Central America. I received that call from his wife, and B, who we all love. It's just a wonderful lady. And Frank had been struggling with Alzheimer's and dementia. And
He had to deal with too many guys like you.
that's right.
I'm not kidding.
Anyway, but I was honored. His funeral's tomorrow morning, Saturday morning. And they've asked me to speak.
Is that where?
It's up in Salt Lake at church, really up kind of South Jordan. So anyway, but Coach Arnold was a great coach. He demanded a lot of us, but we were prepared. He was good. I still use things, even in church college, things that he taught me. Like, really, that's a lot of activity with no achievement. So when I first got there, I dribbled through my legs and do behind the back pass. That's a lot of activity with no achievement. You can do it if you're accomplishing something, but if you're just staying there dribbling between your legs, you're going to dribble off your foot. One turnover costs the game. That's a lot of activity without achievement. So I would teach that to my missionaries who went door knocking for 7 hours, and we weren't getting baptisms in Australia by door knocking in one part of the mission. So I would teach them, it's a lot of activity without achievement. Be quick, but don't hurry. Or it's amazing some of the things that we're taught. And I feel honored to be able to speak at his funeral and represent all the players.
I love that. So I'm glad that she asked you, and you will do a wonderful.
And I don't know why they asked, but to be honest with you, maybe I was one of his first recruits or something. I don't know.
Scott Runia, it is a joy to be back with my old roommate. There's so many other things we could talk about. I remember back when we had only 3 channels on TV. Diana and I moved back to Sacramento, where I worked for what is now Morgan Stanley, but it was Dean Witter. You were at Merrill Lynch in Salt Lake, or in Provo. but I still remember seeing Tammy on TV every day. If you flip how you, when there were only 4 channels, 3 regulars and the UHF, I forget, but every once in a while you saw Tammy up there leading a calisthenics type deal. And they did so well. That was kind of fun. The BYU or KBYU and Tammy were doing that. That was fun to remember.
That was fun. Tammy got into aerobics and popped for a lot of years, and then somebody asked her to go, audition for this thing. They did it. KBYU did it, and it ran for like 20 plus years.
Nationwide, right?
Nationwide. And yeah, and I even said, so like, what do you do when you go do this? And we watched the first one on TV, and it's kind of fun. And yeah, so
Like
this was some reason that ran all that thing.
You've been awesome to talk to. What would your parting thoughts be as Scott Runia and Mike Lacey finish up one of these, conversations?
I think I look at my life and I'm just grateful. I'm humbled. I've married the most wonderful woman in the world. I have 7 incredible kids. Our oldest passed away. I had 16 grandkids. I believe we live with principles in our life that are really important. I want to abide by those principles. I have the best friends like Mike Lacey and others, and I just feel like one of the most fortunate people in the world that I have such wonderful people in my life, and that's the players, friends,
People in your profession.
church. Yeah, I like positive. I like goodness. There's plenty of weaknesses about me. My wife can tell you all those, but life is good. Life is really good, and I'm just grateful for the ride.
One thing that people might not see behind the wonderful smile that Scott has, and Tammy, is that Scott and Tammy have had multiple levels of adversity that are difficult, and I think anybody who goes through life, we all suffer adversities. We didn't get to talk about the death of Ryan and how a mother and father have to go through some of those kinds of things. But Scott, I admire you and Tammy. Keep the work up. Maybe someday we can come back together and have episode 2 and talk about all these other fun stories that you and I are aware of.
Well, thank you, Mike. Mike, you're a dear friend. Appreciate it. I'm honored you and consider me to do something like
Oh, Scott.
Anyway.
No, it's fun, and you've done a great job. Thank you. These stories are treasured. Thank you for watching another episode of Beyond the Game. Remember to click here to subscribe and click here to watch our recent videos. Also, please follow us on social media, and remember, go Cougs.